Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today in our busy schedule. We know you've got tons of things to do, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen to some amazing information from Kim and Tom today. I am Jean-Michel, the LinkedIn rocket scientist, and I'm helping them with this webinar today. I think we've been working together for almost a decade, right? And I like to
Yep.
introduce them as a power couple of Silicon Valley. And of course,
Yeah.
Kim is also well known in this circle as a maker of unicorns. And this will appear very clearly for you throughout this webinar. Um, Tom, you want to take it from there?
Yep. Hey, thanks, Jean-Michel. He is literally a rocket scientist. He has his PhD in rocket scientry, I guess, whatever that's called. But anyway, and obviously from France, one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. I used to go to Grenoble with Hewlett Packard, and you are not far from there, right? Or weren't far from there when you grew up, yeah. So
That's good. I did military service in Grenoble in the Alpine forces. So we
yep,
were pretty
yeah,
close to each other.
yeah. So you don't want to mess with Jean-Michel. Anyway, so I'll get this started. By the way, we're Kim and I are, we are a couple, and we also have a business together. And I'll be honest, I'm not like a rocket scientist with this kind of stuff. In fact, Kim's going to be running the event here, and I'm going to be saying next with every slide. So let's go ahead and start with that. Kim, do you want to click next, please? Yep. So my name is Tom Doherty. I've been in Silicon Valley for about 30 years. I've worked at most every notable company like Hewlett Packard, Cisco, EMC, Dell, Microsoft. Automation Anywhere is a great company I worked at, and we'll talk a little bit about them today. Workday is a current client of mine, so very lucky to have worked with such great companies. Kim is your subject matter expert, or SME. She's AKA the FinOps advisor. She's done nearly 100 startups, 9 of which have become unicorns. Please help us find the 10th so we can, we'll all celebrate when that happens, right? So check out her LinkedIn page, the FinOps advisor. There's a lot of cool stuff, and we'll show you some of the things we've done. Some of the cool articles Kim's written. So it goes beyond just this webinar. There's lots and lots of material to follow up on. Next. Okay, quick disclaimer. Like I was saying, we're not AI experts. We just do real world applications of it, AI and automation. So, just disclaimer, we don't know everything. We're not, deeply involved in this. We don't have PhDs from Stanford on it, but we do know what works, right? We know real world applications that helps average folks become more productive. Okay, Kim.
Well, but however, if you want to learn how I've used AI and automation to reduce companies' month-end close process from 2 months to 5 days and a bunch of other tips and tricks, we hope you'll listen up. We are going to have some real examples towards the later on in the program, and we'll show you how to use it. And yeah, we're going to go there later on in the program.
Thanks. Okay, the agenda. So I learned about the inverted pyramid. This is a funnel, but there's a thing called an inverted pyramid in journalism. And what it says is start with the highest level and work down to the more, in this case, more tactical. So we're going to talk about what's the hype of AI. We're going to talk about what is AI from a definition perspective, what's the difference between AI and automation. By the way, most things that people call AI are really just automation. You're just automating processes, manual processes that you do every day. AI becomes an issue or becomes involved, I should say, when there's a need to have intelligence. A decision has to be made versus doing the same thing over and over. So we'll talk about real world automation. That's something that has to come first, and then real world AI. So next. So real quick, we're going to talk about the AI hype. So a little more detail, a little bit about, what should you believe? There's so much stuff out there. What it is, what it isn't, what the difference is between AI and automation, real world applications like Kim was talking about, and then real world applications and examples of AI. So just real quick, there's a little more detail there. Wait, next, Kim. AI hype, next. And then So this is stuff I deal with every day. So here's some headlines, if you will. These are from IDC, if you know about the International Data Consultants, I think is the name of the company. They're saying that by 2028, 85% of CIOs will have to adapt their organization to harness AI, automation, analytics, and such. Well, I sure hope so. I hope every company is doing automation at a minimum today, right? Then it says by 2024, 65% of CIOs will face pressure to adopt digital tech like Gen AI and such. I hear this in my day-to-day life. I hear CIOs, CFOs, et cetera, saying, oh my God, my CEO went to a webinar and they learned all this stuff. Like, if we don't do AI, we're going to get left behind. We're going to go out of business. So they're putting pressure. They're rolling that downhill to the other CXO level folks. And then what they have is this issue of like, okay, now I have this edict to go forward with AI. I have a budget, but I don't know what to do with it. And that's the bottom line there. The real reality is that CXOs, they know they need to do something, and they're even given a budget, but they have no idea what to spend their money on. And then if you look at the fourth bullet there, an IBM survey said just in today, 1 in 10 finance organizations have optimized traditional AI. And I think it's a little funny to talk about traditional AI, like it hasn't really been around that long. I mean, AI that we know it today, like Chat GPT and such, that's what we know of today. I mean, AI has been around since the 50s, I think. It was started by a guy in Stanford. Only 2% are using and optimizing Gen AI. So this is a pretty big opportunity for folks to leverage this and make themselves and their companies more productive. So next. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. If you say AI, you're likely to get some a lot of backing from your organization. Even they'll give you a boat like this, a nice boat where you can drink champagne. And if you're crazy, you'll drive the boat, hopefully not while you're drinking champagne. But this is just an example of, it kind of epitomizes for me what the reality is around all of the hype. If you say AI on it, you're likely to get some budget for it. But then you got to deliver, right? And we're going to teach you how to deliver on that, how to get real ROI on, just on a few things, not everything, but you'll see. Okay, next. Okay. I don't know if you've seen this before. This is the hype cycle. This works for anything, really. This is Gartner's sort of invention. This worked for like the .com days. If those of you who lived through that, call it kind of good, and then it was kind of a nightmare. Where it's like a roller coaster. You go up, click, 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 and you hit the peak, and like, no, and you go off the cliff. So they're predicting that, as I read this was as of July of last year, so almost exactly a year ago, that in 2 years, Gen AI will have hit its peak. So that gives us another year, and then we go downhill, and we kind of plummet into the trough of disillusionment, right? It's like, oh man, I thought that was going to change the world, and it just really kind of just helped a bit, but it wasn't the be all and end all. Ultimately, if you look out to the left from a timeline perspective, it will plateau into a plateau of productivity. So that's kind of like where we see .coms are today, right? We use it every day. It's continuing to grow, but incrementally. It's not like in the late 2000s. I'm sorry, in the start of the decade of the 2000s, where it was just kind of crazy. So next. Yeah. A couple of things to take away, right? If you're hearing all this hype about AI, don't worry if you don't have all the AI answers. Again, nobody does. AI doesn't have the answers. AI will not be taking your job, no matter what they say. But do what you can do today. So step one, automate. Like I was saying, most of AI that I see out there in the world today is really just automating processes. Under automate, there's 2 steps. 1A is use existing tools. Don't invent the wheel. Don't use RPA when there's already a system in place, like NetSuite or something. So some people use, they'll write like a bot to connect data from Salesforce into, and we'll show you this, create a bot to write data from Salesforce into NetSuite. Well, if you already have that NetSuite, there's already an API that lets you do that. So you don't have to write this code. You just let the software do it. It's what it's designed to do. But if you don't know that, and a lot of people don't, Kim's told me this, then you might write low code, no code kind of script that does the work, and you didn't need to. So number one, 1A, use the tools, use the apps that have automation built in. Then where there's gaps, use RPA. And then step two, I call it AI to mate, right? So, start working with tools that have built-in AI, and a lot of them do, like I was saying, NetSuite does, Expensify, and some of these others do. And then while you're doing that, experiment with Gen AI and other tools. Okay, next. Okay, what is AI? Next, so I won't go into too much. You can all look this up yourself, but there's really kind of four areas. There's the overall overarching AI, artificial intelligence. Then there's Gen AI, which we're all familiar with. That helps you write like emails or answer LinkedIn or things like that. You can use it. You can use it for imagery, audio, et cetera. And Chat GPT is obviously an example. ML is where you train the system to do things like make a decision. Like, if there's an issue where there's two, or there's somebody wanting to borrow some money from the bank, and their credit score is right at the limit, maybe ML can understand that these people have, different aspects, different factors, and they'll make that decision. NLP, natural language processing, is that this can actually understand not just the human language, but also tone. And I'll show you an example that's kind of cool and kind of eerie too, where kind of a little big brotherish, if you will. So then there's other AI technologies that we're not going to talk about, like RAG, LLM, things like that. So next. Here's a few articles that Kim has written to get you started. This first one is exactly what I was saying. Do not buy AI software yet. The admonition of this, the key thesis statement is make sure everything's automated first. Make sure, like a little kid asks mom, can I go out and play? And she says, no, make sure your room is cleaned first. Then once you do that, then you can go out and play. Well, make sure your house is in order. Make sure everything that can be automated is automated, then do AI. Right. Next. And Kim, you can just go through these. Just a few articles on, and here's a guy with a job interview next to a robot. It's kind of funny. Automate bills. Kim's going to talk to you about that, invoicing and such. And then on down the list of tax problems, sales and use tax, or state and local tax, SALT, SALT, and then on the other two. So there's lots of articles on Kim's LinkedIn. There's about 30. So I encourage you to check those out. So next. Okay, step one, automate, right? Very, very most important thing. Oh, Kim and I both worked with a gentleman, super wonderful guy named Michael Loftus. He was a serial entrepreneur. He's probably done 500 companies. But one of his main premises was companies who run their businesses on spreadsheets go out of business. So you don't want to be doing that, right? You don't want to be copying and pasting data from one to the other. That's where automation comes in, and then AI too. So next. So two-step strategy, I won't repeat that. I just wanted you to just ingrain this into your minds, how important this is. Next. Okay. Here's some examples. I'm gonna let Kim take over after this, but I think I am anyway. Examples are quote to cash. You have a quote, and this is part of an ASC 605 and 606 ruling. This is compliance. This is by law. You have to follow these rules. Month-end close that Kim was talking about, procure to pay, state and local taxes that we talked about. So if you have, for example, if you're operating out of the state of California, for example, and you have customers in different states, you have to follow their tax laws. And the governments are always happy to create new taxes and new laws and such, and you have to follow them. And what a lot of people do, and Kim can talk to this, is that they'll have a spreadsheet with, okay, Florida has 5.3% sales tax, or income tax, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to keep up on those. And the best thing to do is not to use a spreadsheet, rather to use a software product that's designed for that keeps track of that for you, like Avalara or something. So yeah, I won't go into all these, but yeah, so let me go to the next one. So this is what I was talking about. This is that, swivel chair computing. Notice the young lady here, she's moving data from one thing to another. So in this case, it's Salesforce, could be a spreadsheet. and then into Oracle NetSuite. So the sale was one. To keep track of that, to make sure you're in compliance with ASC 606, you have to make sure that what you invoice follows very, very closely, if not exactly, to what was promised and discussed and signed off on in the invoice. I'm sorry, in the sales agreement. So I just wanted to tell you that if you get that idea, so imagine your employees, right? They're moving data from one area to the other. Not only is it incredibly boring, but it's also prone to error, right? If you're manually copying and pasting and then, somebody phone calls, whatever, you lose the data, you lose track. It's a big issue with errors, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, unfortunately. And that's an article Kim wrote about too, is are your accountants making mistakes? And it's because they're overworked. There's all this complexity, all these software programs and such. So best thing to do is to automate as much as you can with both applications and then also with AI. So, okay. All right. So, Kim, I think you're going to take over here.
Yeah, sure. So on the quote to cash process, which most people know about, the general process is matching the sales order to the customer purchase order and then to the invoice. There's a contract review, there's pricing of your software or products, and then there's a need from a compliance perspective. And like in the example in accounting, there's ASC 606 compliance aspect of the contract billing and the revenue recognition. You can keep track of all of these details and the contract terms and conditions in an ERP, just like NetSuite or Intact or Workday. You can use automation software that is already created by the experts. So, why would you go out and try to use something else? Or the worst thing is actually using a spreadsheet to keep track of all of this. If you don't have something like an ERP, then you can use, automation software such as like Automation Anywhere to automate the process externally. But automation is the way to go in all of these cases instead of using, there's still a lot of people who are using spreadsheets in order to keep track of all of this stuff. So even in this process, using software that'll take care of all of these things, not only is there an accuracy issue, but even just flat out doing it wrong is a big issue. After automation, this is an example of how it just automatically takes the data from Salesforce into NetSuite automatically, and there is no person typing things in manually. It just automatically puts the information in there, and then your ERP takes it from there and records everything. Of course, there's always, the review process and verification manually, but for the most part, majority of all the work is done automatically. And then for more information on the revenue recognition, there is an article in a post in LinkedIn called Keeping RevRec from Becoming a RevRec. And there's a post about that you could read up on. On the month-end close, I've actually worked with almost 100 companies as a consultant. And oftentimes, most of the time, they have gone from a 2-month closed cycle, a month-end close cycle, and managed to bring them down to a 5-day close cycle. And that's quite an accomplishment. Most of them are they don't have checklists, they don't have anything put in place, and that's oftentimes the problem. So with a lot of these softwares and automation that you put in place, it automatically creates checklists of tasks with due dates, collaborates within the system between team members, and it automates the reconciliation process and integrates with accounting systems. And these are just examples of 4 systems that help with that automation process. So Flowcast, Blackline, Vina, and Workiva are examples of those that work really well. And through this process, we're going to go through several software products that I would recommend and that I have used that seem to work really well. I mean, there's hundreds of software products out there that claim to do the trick on a lot of these processes, but I've used several of them, hundreds of them, and a lot of them do not work very well. So the ones that I'm mentioning in our program here are ones that I have used and have worked well. In the procure to pay process, the automation software such like Bill.com, and there's several others that I could recommend that match the purchase order to receiving products to a bill. There's a three-way matching process. They match the payment to the bill, they automate the approval workflow process, and the automation can expedite the AP reconciliation process. So again, automation's the way to go. I mean, there is a manual process. There's even people who are, moving pieces of paper still to this day without using automation. So in this example, when we talk about AI Tomate, this is the step 1B prior to that process. Is called the Automate 1B in our prior slide. And as you can see, Automation Anywhere is an example of one of those companies that use RPA, where they collect invoices and extract the data through a bot, and they match the invoice to the PO data, and payment is submitted all through an RPA, but there is an actual manual review of the invoice data by a person. Did you want to add anything to that, Tom?
No, just if there's an exception. The example I gave before with somebody trying to get a loan, this might be where things aren't quite 100% matched up in the invoice to PO, so that would be automatically sent to somebody, what they call a human in the loop, and that person will then approve it or not approve it or whatever, and then that goes back as training data. So the system learns by that, like, oh, okay, well, next time I'll do it, I'll know how to do it because the human helped me do it. So that's how it works. And again, use the program like Bill.com first, and then fill in the gaps with automation, RPA, low code, no code kind of thing. So
many accountants, what they do is they keep track of their state and local taxes on spreadsheets. They actually go through this grueling, horrible process of calculating either monthly or quarterly their use tax and their sales tax all through spreadsheets in order to come and do a calculation on millions of, I wouldn't say millions, multiple sheets on their work papers in order to come up and file their taxes. So automation software such as Avalara, TaxJar, AmRock, and Davo are all recommended softwares that'll go in there and take care of this thing automatically, and also work in conjunction with your current accounting software. People who aren't using this are spending hours and hours of time every period trying to do that. And when you come into multiple states, not just one, it takes up just a ton of time of your staff, and also there's also an accuracy problem that occurs when trying to report on that. And later on in the program, I'm going to show you how even when you're using automation software like one of these, what you could do in transition when you're adding states to your software, how an AI program can help you assist with that and working with your accounting team. On expense reports, the old way was to use an Excel sheet with receipts and submit them to your accounting team, who has to manually review them and match them and check everything. And when you get to bigger companies with multiple employees, that could be a whole entire head count that is spending their time doing that every month. The new way is to automate that with software such as Concur or Expensify or Tally, Airbase. Those are all really good programs that are out there right now that are helping people automate that. And what they do is they'll automatically flag when to whoever's in the accounting team when the expense isn't compliant with company policy, the receipts don't match what's submitted, or the receipts are not attached. They even go as far as doing the audit for you, where you don't have to increase your head count, and they do the audit, and then you have random audits of maybe one every 50 expense reports, then there's a random audit that someone can do. But it really reduces your expense, and it also makes things more accurate. So there's plenty of ways in order to use automation to reduce your costs as well as make things more accurate. On the payroll side, there's several ways to keep costs down and also to make things more accurate is to automate your payroll through third-party payroll providers such as ADP or Gusto. Also nowadays, even after COVID, we find that people are hiring people outside of their home state. There are more remote workers now, and companies aren't even going back to their offices anymore as much as they were before. So in order to keep compliant with HR laws, as well as hiring people within other states, what that does is not only does it create more issues with trying to keep on top of taxes, on top of all the rules about hiring and terminating and onboarding, but it also creates complexity with sales tax and use tax on top of that. So with all that, the recommendation of using a PEO will make sure that you're not only compliant, but it can keep the overall costs down and provide better benefits and retain your people. So third-party services such as TriNet, ADP's Total Source, and JustWorks and things like that can help you do that. And they integrate, the key is to integrate it with your accounting system so that people aren't creating incorrect journal entries or manually creating journal entries and putting them into their accounting systems. Now, capitalization table management. How many people are paying their attorneys $500 to $600 an hour to manage that? It may not be a big job, but with larger companies, it is a big job. When they're issuing stock, people are exercising their shares, or just trying to do their 409A every year as required as a private company. You can automate that solution and cut down your costs with your attorney bills by using an automated solution such as Carta, ShareWorks. I also recommend Pulley's Certain or EQ Vista. All of these solutions have a turnkey system where they will provide the service of a company 409A and an integrated way to calculate stock compensation expense. Not all of the cap table management software will do that. So before you enter into looking at purchasing a software solution, you may want to look at least these ones that I'm recommending here. All do that, but not all of them do. So before you go and purchase one or go to use one, you might want to check into that because it cuts down on the effort and the expense every year when you're going to do those other two applications. So Tom, on AI Automate, do you want to go into that?
Yeah, so here's a real quick example next for the in HR, and this is something that I've seen. I think it's kind of interesting. I'm going to click to the next slide. So, there's a huge talent shortage out there, especially in IT. Accounting sees that a lot, and part of the problem is people don't have the skills. So, what ML, machine learning, can do for customers and for companies, I should say, is that if somebody has, somebody's trying to work their way up through the company, for example, and they have a skill in, for example, in accounting. Well, let's say that they can take tests. What ML can do is it can understand all of the aspects and all the parameters of what these students are doing in their testing, and then they can say, okay, well, you're a little weak here, maybe in I don't know, IFRS, the international accounting standards. So maybe take a class from Udemy or LinkedIn, et cetera, or even, the university. So, and then they could get retested. And when they pass that, then they're eligible for a promotion or something like that. So that's an example of machine learning, and it learns what that person is good at, where they need improvement and so on. And it makes the evaluations of employees a lot easier because it's automated, but also it helps that employee learn where they can improve and where they can then move up through the organization and make a contribution. This also, I don't know if I said this before, but it's very important that with all this automation, employees are more engaged. They're not doing this rudimentary, boring work. They're doing like more strategic level work because the automation takes care of the copying and pasting in the swivel chair computing for them. So they're happier employees. So that also helps. Not only are they more skilled because of this, but they're also more content. They're less likely to leave, and it's a win-win all the way around. So just, and for disclaimer, this is at an enterprise level. This is something that PricewaterhouseCoopers is doing. I happen to know about this, but it's an example of what they can do. The beauty of AI is it's an equalizer, right? If you're not at that level, if you're not at an enterprise level, you can use ChatGPT to help write some of these things and help you get started. So then the last thing is writing in the correct tone, and I believe, Kim, you're going to be talking about that real quick.
Yeah. So I wanted to go through an example of showing you how you can write in the correct tone using ChatGPT. This is something that some people don't know about, or maybe they do, and it's kind of interesting how this can help you. Sometimes writing in the correct tone can be a problem, or you might be able to phrase your emails better at work. And I'm going to show you how you can use ChatGPT to keep your emails professional and help you restructure your communication in the best light, even when you really want to say what is not, what your HR department would say is necessarily PC. So in softening an email, let's say we want to tell ChatGPT to pretend to be me and write a reply to an email to an employee who's, let's give an example in an HR situation where an employee's been provided an HR policy that one must use their vacation time after their sick time is exhausted. Once their vacation time was gone, they need to follow, they have to use their unpaid time off policy. Even though they have a sick child in the hospital and the company has a policy that they cannot go negative with their paid time off. This is really oftentimes a difficult thing to be able to tell somebody. So how do you write an email that says that? So I'm going to put that scenario into ChatGPT, and it's going to write an email for us. Now, sometimes it can take a while to come up with something that's professionally written and sympathetic and outlines the policy, but ChatGPT will write up this email. It'll even provide suggestions on exploring other options. So, and it writes it in seconds. Oftentimes, even difficult things to say when you're going to write to somebody within the organization, how you're going to phrase it, this will do it for you. It's quite surprising how it can do that for you. Let me give you another example of how ChatGPT will help you with writing to others. Sometimes people in the organization don't follow process, and this can be frustrating. So instead of writing an email drilling down a bunch of questions that demand answers, like any CFO or executive will tend to do, this example shows how a director didn't consider the budget and raise a purchase order for a U.S. organization or provide estimates for costs in the budget for the next 3 years. So all we have to do in ChatGPT is put in the parameters and say, hey, I want you to pretend to be me and write a reply to the following text. So when I put those parameters in, I'm telling it to, hey, did someone raise a purchase request for this expense through the U.S. organization and pay for this? Where does this appear in our budget? What will I be estimating for these 2 years for the expense? I need projections, and who will be providing this to me? So really, when you put those, if you would have said that in an email, it would not have sounded so nice. What ChatGPT does is that writes it up in a much nicer format to where it says something that you could have said, but it says it in a much better way. It produces an email that politely asks the same questions, but in a different tone. So another example, in our everyday work, we often get thrown under the bus by people we work with, even if they're outside of the organization. And we really want to write back a scathing email, like, you want to tell them off, but you really can't do that. So ChatGPT can help us calm down our communication and help us construct an effective email. And that will help us keep ourselves out of hot water. So in this example, a subcontractor submitted invoices for 3 months at a time in an account to the accounting team, and then escalated to the CEO that they were not getting paid timely and wanted payment immediately. For a finance consultant, that would look bad. So how can you create a tactful reply and write that up? So with ChatGPT, we could tell it, hey, write up an email to an impatient subcontractor who submitted invoices for 3 months, just 3 days ago, and now escalated to get paid immediately. So if I tell that to ChatGPT, what is it going to tell us? It creates this whole entire, including the subject, on how it would soften an email. It creates this email tactfully and puts together the words within seconds with professionalism, and even puts the vendor at ease with a resolution without you having to pour a long time over writing an email. It makes things so much easier, because otherwise you could be taking a really long time to write up these emails. So this is part of what a lot of these software programs do, is they use this ChatGPT background. I'm using OpenAI in this example, but there's different programs such as Perplexity and others that will call out later in this program to tell you how they work, what their pros and cons are, and what use cases you could use them for. So I'm going to go back to our program, and go back to the screen, and we'll continue on with our program. All right. Tom, you want to go on with the Mind the Gap?
Yeah, so GAP is generally accepted accounting principles, and compliance is a big issue. And so there's a cool way, and Kim was made a suggestion about, for example, how does GAP, which is US based, compare to IFRS, which is European based? So that might be a thing to use ChatGPT for, and ask it different questions. So Kim, you had commented on the cool thing. Look at the bottom. You can save 100 to 200 hours of work by doing this yourself versus asking a Big Four firm, which are very, very good, but they're very expensive. So
right.
if you can use ChatGPT on your side,
yeah. So in this example, we had a post that we created called Mind the Gap, and one of the things is important is called compliance. And in this example, ChatGPT could be used to save thousands of dollars in consulting fees when you're usually in an audit, when you have multiple entities that are in a particular company, and they are in multiple countries. Usually there's a thing called gap to stat differences between their policies, and those journal entries need to be created. This is often a thing that companies are faced with, and they have to do this at the end of every audit. So instead of spending 100 to 200 hours worth of work with a Big Four or other consulting firms, you could save a lot of that money by using ChatGPT to be able to create those differences by simply putting in your written policies into GPT to compare those policies, as well as put in the balance sheet schedules to compare those differences and come up with those journal entries that you're going to need, and spend a whole lot less money in the long run of coming up with those differences. So that's a practical application of using that.
Yeah. And Kim, did you say also you could compare contracts?
Yes, I'm going to show an actual
Okay.
example of that in
Cool.
later on.
Cool. Yeah. So here's an article that Kim wrote, Mind the Gap. If you've been to London, if you've been in, down in the tube, we call it a subway, but they call it the tube. There are these signs everywhere, Mind the Gap, but it's GAP. And so Kim cleverly, photoshopped this and made it GAAP. But it's a good article, and it talks about how you could use, similar to what Kim was just talking about, how to keep up to date with GAP principles and be compliant, et cetera, and using automation to do so. So check it out.
Yeah. So in this example, we used ChatGPT when I mentioned it earlier on state and local taxes. So in the example, even when companies are using automation with systems such as Avalara or TaxJar, they may be in a transition before they've added their state to their system, and they now need to add sales tax or accrue for use tax. They need to communicate to their accounting team the tax rates and guidelines. I've used ChatGPT to identify what is taxable for a state to provide guidance to my accounting team. You could simply put into ChatGPT the certain questions in order to identify what those values are in order to communicate. So in the case of, let's say, this company, they now have to start, they have a new location of Denver, Colorado. You can simply ask it, what is taxable in Denver, Colorado? So it'll give you those guidelines of when to determine what's use tax and what is taxable, because it's definitely different from California. And Colorado seems to be an up-and-coming state for a lot of companies. Now, here's another thing, is that you may need to layer on, you can layer within layer in ChatGPT. Let's say that within this definition, you need to find out, well, what can you please define what digital property is specifically? You want to know what those specific things are. You can now, within the same chat, say, give me examples of what you define as digital property in Denver, specifically Denver, not just Colorado. It'll now take the prior information that it just described, and it'll even give you a more detailed information on that specific note, for example. And then within that same chat, you can then ask the next question if you need even more information about that. In this case, I want to know what examples are of taxable property in Colorado, for example, because as you're reading, you want to get even more detailed and more specific so that you can further define, what your rules are going to be that you're going to be giving to your accounting team. Because even though the system is going to be defined with your software, you still have to understand what those rules are and make sure that you're interpreting those laws more clearly. So even as a accounting professional, you need to know more information about a specific jurisdiction. This will give you even that detail, and just, so that you further understand it. It's not just a tool for, doing state and local taxes, but it's giving you that better detail down to what you really, really need to know. And it makes you more an informed professional, which is just very important for people in doing their day-to-day job. So under customer service and retention, I think Tom was going to speak to this part of that. Tom.
Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, so here's another example of where AI, by way of NLP, natural language processing can look at something. I apologize, it's a little blurry here, but this is a customer service. They're calling in for their claim. They had probably had a fender bender with their car, and this person writes and they say, it's been 24 hours. I was supposed to have heard back in 24 hours. I did not. And then it says, I need my car ASAP, exclamation point. So what NLP will do is detect the tone of that, and they'll say, oh, this customer's not happy. And it will automatically update the priority. That's in the second slide, update the priority and escalate the issue to a human representative versus a chatbot. So that's kind of a cool example that you could use for NLP. So if, there's just so many opportunities, but if you think about this and other ways that you can help. Now, the example I was going to give that NLP, I didn't want to put it in paper because it can happen where if somebody gets a bad review, from HR through their annual review or whatever, I've heard of companies like monitoring their emails, and so somebody's like not happy, and they're like, I'm gonna do whatever. That NLP can detect the tone, and if need be, HR can take action or whatever. I don't, it's kind of big brotherish to me, I think, but it's another example where NLP can interpret the tone and the sentiment behind what's being said. So I just want to talk about that one. The next slide. Here's an example that you can use every day with LinkedIn. So there's a thing called vis-a-vis, and there's others, but vis-a-vis is one I like. And let's say you want to comment on something. There's some new tax law, or there's some new product or service that comes out. Well, you can, instead of writing it, which obviously takes time, you can have vis-a-vis write it, and it's an add-in on LinkedIn. So this is what it looks like on your LinkedIn. And you go to the comment and click on it, and you set the goal, the tone, your persona, if you like, and hit generate, and it'll generate a message. One of the key things, and I know it's kind of common sense, but never just hit send. Make sure you review what they say, because sometimes it can not sound like you. I like to write like very conversant, like, hey dude, what's going on, kind of thing. But this is, this can be somewhat robotic if you're not, careful. So be sure to read these before you send them. That's, seems like common sense, but I've actually done it where I didn't send it. They're like, wow, I don't sound like that. So that I recommend this product, vis-a-vis. And by the way, we get no money from these folks. It's just our experience, and we want to help spread the word about what this, what the options are out there. So
yeah, that's true. But yeah, we don't get anything from anybody for talking about these software. It was just actually real life experience and using the products, and just trying to share with the world what we've used, and what good experiences or not good experiences we've had. So hoping that people will benefit from this information. So the other AI examples that we have on here of products that are used, a lot of people use this stuff with their emails, and there are some add-ons and extensions that are available to be used with like your Outlook or with your Gmail and things like that. So just to talk about a few, there's Jasper for writing articles and things like that. Perplexity. So for those products that have a ChatGPT backend, Perplexity is similar to. So the one I was showing you that I use most often is called OpenAI, and that has the ChatGPT backend. Perplexity also has a ChatGPT backend. And the differences between the two is that Perplexity is more of a conversational ChatGPT. It just has a different interface, and it's somewhat similar. There's a free and a paid version. The differences between some of them, I'll go over a little bit about that. In the OpenAI interface, the free version, you do get access to, there are different versions of GPT, by the way. The GPT 3.5, it has information that's only been updated through 2021. However, you do get a limited amount of access to GPT-4o. It has and then it resets within a 3-hour window. But then if you do the paid version, you get a more advanced version that you get access to for data analysis, file uploads, and web browsing, and it even gives you image generation. So it does have more advanced information. So you could definitely get access. Some of them have like MS Copilot allows only access to Microsoft products, no Gmail and things like that. So there's others that are like Claude 3, Google Gemini and things like that, but they're definitely mostly up for development. I just wanted to show you just a couple more examples that I think you might find interesting. And that is for like a contract comparison, which I think that people might want to see. And then we're going to be pretty much sewing things up because we're going to run out of time pretty soon. So for example, I just wanted to show you how to compare two contracts. And just remember that to review the output, like Tom said, you just can't just take what it produces and just send things to people. It needs to be validated and updated because sometimes you just have to make sure that the information is what you need it to say. So I have two consulting contracts that I want to compare. And what it does is it compares the clauses and it points out the differences.
Yep. Kim, can I set the scenario? So let's say you have an NDA and you have yours, and then you're hiring a contractor or consultant and they have theirs. Well, you want to, be generous and maybe use theirs, but you want to make sure it has everything you need. So what Kim is saying is you can take theirs, compare to yours, see if there's differences, and then, if theirs works, use theirs. That, I'll probably appreciate that. So.
Right. So when it does take, like I took two consulting agreements, and what it does is it looks at the terms, it looks at maybe the jurisdictional differences, it'll look at its scope of work, it'll compare the compensation, it'll look at each of the areas for IP, things like that. This can save you a ton of time instead of manually comparing two different documents. Sure, you could go into Word and do Microsoft Word and compare two different agreements, but it'll specifically it's only looking at words. What ChatGPT is doing is that it's looking at the meaning and the definition of the different clauses. This is very powerful. This is something that people could spend a whole lot of time doing, or it could save you hours of that. But then again, just, a word of caution, make sure that you're reviewing what it says, that, that it rings true, that the information makes sense, and that, you're not just sending things off. That's the most important part.
Yeah. So rather than pay an attorney, and we love attorneys, of course, but if you can do it yourself, why not? Right. So.
Right. Exactly. I think that, had a couple more examples, but these are the biggest examples that I think were the most important that people would want to see. So why don't we go back to our program here, and maybe we could have some questions and answers if anybody has any.
Yeah. So I don't see any in chat at the moment.
Okay, so if anyone doesn't have any, we can go to finish up and go to our call to action.
Yeah, so I would say if you've not connected with Kim, please do so. There's also Kim as an executive ecosystem, which I think is pretty cool. And that, ideally be like a marketplace for services. It'd be, hey, I need an attorney, or I IP attorney, or I need this, and you collaborate and work together. That's what the original intent is. It is somewhat like that. People discuss things, but sign up for that. You have to be let in. So, but I'm sure it won't be a problem for this group. And then reach out to Kim with questions via Kimberly at FinOpsAdvisory.com. And then there's a cool book, and we have a question. So Kim didn't write this book. Jamie Pride did. He's from Australia, and he's been through a couple of his own startups, and he knows what it goes through. And honestly, what I was looking for a book to read, and I was looking for, Kim's into unicorns, and I thought, okay, well, this might be a good book. And what I thought was going to be like crocodile tears, if you know what that is, and that's where, like, oh, don't feel too sorry for these rich kids who get 30 million bucks. And Kim actually worked with a gentleman who that happened with. We can tell you that story sometime offline. Don't feel, the thought was it's crocodile tears, don't feel too sorry for them. But the reality is it's unicorn tears from the perspective of burnout, divorce, mental issues, alcoholism. It really talks about, like, this is what happens to people if they don't have like a good work-life balance, if they don't follow the rules of, get enough sleep, involve your family, take time off. So it's a really cool, but there's a lot of practical step-by-step things to do. Like if you need to get funding, when do you bring on your board people? When do you bring on and one of the key things, advice is, it would be, don't bring on a CFO right away. Get an interim CFO. That's what one of the things Kim does, right? So the question is, should we do a webinar on it? And let us know if you think, and we'll. It's a fascinating book, and read the book review. It's well done. The book is a couple hundred pages. The review is 2 or 3 or so, not too long, but it captures the key salient points. So that's that. And then the next one is, if you want to get in touch with either of us, there's Kim and me. I'm happy to chat and happy to answer any questions. And then, of course, Jean-Michel, the real star of the show. Actually, Kim is. But if you want to get in touch with him, he's available. But yeah, Kim is amazing. And I encourage you to reach out to her and get to know her, and she'll be happy to help you and your peers and such. So look forward to chatting with you all further.
Kim, Tom, thank you so much. It was very enlightening, a little bit above my head, of course. But there is a couple of questions. So one question is, our company is looking at using either Bill.com or Ramp to automate credit cards and their reconciliations. Which do you recommend?
They want to automate credit cards. Yeah, Bill.com is not really for credit cards. So if they were looking at Ramp, that would be better for a credit card solution.
Yeah, one of the things that these expense programs like Expensify have is they have credit cards, and they'll even give you a discount where, and I think that's in a white paper that Kim wrote, and it's where if by the way, we haven't worked on our house. I don't know if you heard somebody drop their hammer out there. If you have Expensify, you can get a credit card, and people use the credit cards instead of using like American Express or Visa, whatever, and you get a fee. You get like 1% back, I think, and that can help pay for the cost of the software. So you basically can get the software for free. So that's kind of a cool idea. I don't know if that's exactly along the lines of what the question was, but something to think about.
And we do have a thumb up from Alicia Nordal. She says, yes, please do a webinar on the book. So she's interested in that. So you guys
Awesome.
got your work cut out for you.
Yay. Yeah, well, this to me will be easier. It's not as technical. It's more pragmatic, but it's a great book, and we're happy to do that in the future. So.
Well, thank you for attending, everyone.
Thank you. And please do keep in touch.
We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, and you will receive a replay in the next couple of days. I know it's a lot of information at a fast pace, and we can only take notes so quickly, right? I already have a cramp, but so definitely send you the replay in a day or two. So thank you again for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.